Emily had spent the evening at the grand estate of the Hawkins family. The mansion, a symbol of old money and power, had welcomed her with open arms, until now. She had been invited to the birthday party of Ryan Hawkins, the son of one of the wealthiest families in the city. Dressed in an elegant yet modest gown, Emily had walked into the party feeling like an outsider. She wasn't for money, but Ryan had assured her it didn't matter, but the whispers had started the moment she stepped inside. She doesn't belong here. Did you see her dress? How cheap. She's only here because of Ryan. Such a gold digger. Emily tried to ignore them, holding on to Ryan's hand tighter. He had promised her that he didn't care about their differences, that love was enough. But as the night went on, Ryan's demeanor changed. He grew distant, his hands slipping away from hers, his smiles becoming forced. Then, at midnight, everything fell apart. One of the elite girls, Madison, smirked as she clinked her champagne glass. So, Emily, how does it feel to be here on borrowed time? Emily frowned. What do you mean? Madison leaned in, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Ryan's parents don't want you here. They think you're an embarrassment. And I heard Ryan agrees. Emily turned to Ryan, expecting him to deny it. But he didn't. Instead, he looked away, guilt and shame written all over his face. Before she knew it, the security was escorting her out. Humiliated, heartbroken, and shivering in the cold, she had no idea that by morning, everything would change. And the Hawkins family would regret ever underestimating her. As the first rays of the sun filtered through the grand mansion's windows, Emily stirred awake. A sharp, unfamiliar chill crawled over her skin. She wasn't in her comfortable bed, she was on the cold, marble floor of the hallway. The events of the previous night came rushing back. She had been thrown out of the luxurious guest suite, humiliated, insulted, and left with nowhere to go. The servants who once treated her with respect now looked at her with scorn. The elite guests who had raised their glasses in her honor last night now avoided eye contact. Get out before the others wake up, a maid hissed, tossing a worn-out coat at her feet. We don't need your kind here. Emily's throat tightened, but she refused to let them see her cry. She picked up the coat, wrapped it around herself, and made her way toward the door. Just as she reached the entrance, the grand staircase creaked. A pair of sharp heels clicked against the polished floor. It was Vivian, the woman who had orchestrated her downfall. Oh, leaving so soon? Vivian's voice dripped with mockery. Did you really think you belonged here? Emily clenched her fists. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but she knew nothing she said would matter. To them, she was just a nobody, a stain on their perfect world. As she stepped outside, the heavy doors slammed shut behind her. The world outside was just as cruel, the cold air biting against her skin. She had lost everything. Or so they thought. Because they had no idea who she really was. Emily sat on the mansion's stone steps, her fingers numb from the cold morning air. The world around her felt unreal. Just last night, she had been inside, dressed in elegance, surrounded by people who pretended to care. Now, she was nothing to them. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She almost didn't answer, her mind was too clouded with shame. But something inside her told her to look. Unknown number. She hesitated before swiping the screen. Hello? A deep, commanding voice filled her ear. Emily. Her breath hitched. She knew that voice. It had been years since she last heard it, but it was unforgettable. Dad? Silence. Then, a slow inhale. Where are you? Emily bit her lip, her throat tightening. I don't know. Outside the Ashford estate. There was another pause, but this time, the weight behind it was different. When her father spoke again, his voice had an edge that made the hairs on her arms stand up. Stay where you are. The line went dead. Emily stared at the phone, her heart pounding. She hadn't seen her father in so long. He had always been a mystery, powerful, distant, untouchable. What was he going to do? Would he even care about what had happened? And then, just as she was drowning in doubt, the quiet hum of an approaching engine caught her attention. A sleek black limousine rolled up in front of the mansion. Everything was about to change. The black limousine came to a slow, deliberate stop in front of the estate. The Ashford staff, who had been gossiping about Emily's disgrace just moments ago, froze in place. The driver, dressed in a crisp black suit, stepped out and walked to the back, opening the door with practiced precision, and then he stepped out, Alexander Grayson, the billionaire. The untouchable force of power and wealth. Emily's father. The moment he emerged, the air seemed to shift. His sharp, commanding gaze swept across the estate, taking in the sight of his daughter sitting on the cold stone steps. His jaw tightened, whispers rippled through the staff. Some took a step back instinctively. Alexander Grayson was not a man to be crossed. Amar Ashford, the owner of the estate, rushed out, his face pale. And Mr. Grayson, what an unexpected surprise! Alexander ignored him, his long strides closing the distance between him and Emily. Without a word, he took off his expensive coat and draped it over her shivering shoulders. Who did this to you? His voice was low but filled with restrained fury. Emily swallowed hard. It doesn't matter, it does. His piercing eyes locked onto hers. Tell me. Before she could answer, one of the maids, visibly nervous, blurted out, Sir, it was Miss Lillian and Mr. Ashford Jr. They told us to throw her out. A heavy silence fell over the estate. Alexander turned, his cold stare landing on the trembling figures of Lillian and Ashford Jr., who had just appeared at the doorway. I asked that so. His voice was dangerously calm, the staff shifted uncomfortably. The storm was coming, and they all knew, no one would escape unscathed. Lillian and Ashford Jr. stood frozen at the doorway, their faces drained of color as Alexander Grayson's icy gaze locked onto them. Did you throw my daughter out? He asked, his voice deceptively calm. Ashford Jr. swallowed hard, trying to force a smirk. Mr. Grayson, this is all a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Alexander took a slow step forward. His presence alone was suffocating. You humiliated her. You treated her like garbage. And you dare call it a misunderstanding? Lillian's hands trembled as she clung to Ashford Jr.'s arm. We didn't know she was your daughter, she stammered. Alexander let out a quiet, humorless chuckle. Ah, so if she wasn't my daughter, this treatment would be acceptable? The realization hit them like a punch. There was no talking their way out of this. The staff, who had been laughing at Emily just hours ago, now stood with their heads bowed, terrified to meet Alexander's eyes. Even Mr. Ashford, the owner of the estate, looked like he was about to collapse. I own half of the city, Alexander continued, his voice sharp as a blade. Yet you thought you could throw my daughter onto the streets like some beggar? And Mr. Grayson, please, Mr. Ashford stammered. We didn't mean. Alexander raised a hand, silencing him. Then, he turned to his assistant, who had just stepped out of the limo, holding a tablet, effective immediately. Alexander said coldly, I want every contract I hold with the Ashford family revoked. Their businesses, their properties, everything. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ashford Jr. paled. No, you can't do that. Alexander's gaze darkened. I just did. And with that, the Ashford empire began to crumble. A chilling silence fell over the estate as Alexander Grayson's words echoed through the halls. The weight of his power had just crushed the Ashfords, and everyone knew there was no coming back from this. Ashford Jr. staggered back, his confident smirk wiped clean. You can't just destroy us like this, he stammered. Alexander turned to his assistant. Ensure that all our companies terminate their partnerships with the Ashfords. Every deal, every contract, every investment, withdraw immediately. The assistant nodded and swiftly tapped on the tablet, sending out the orders. Lillian's eyes widened in horror. No! Please, Mr. Grayson, we had no idea Emily was your daughter. If we had known, Alexander's cold laughter cut her off. And that's precisely the problem. You only respect wealth and power. Not people. Mr. Ashford, who had been silent all this time, finally stepped forward, his face pale. Mr. Grayson, we can fix this. I can assure you there is no fixing this. Alexander's voice was razor sharp. Your family has built its empire on arrogance and cruelty. Now, you'll watch it crumble. A phone rang in the background. One of Ashford Jr.'s business partners was calling, but as he picked it up, the color drained from his face. They're pulling out of the project, he whispered, his hands shaking. Then another call. And another. Each one delivering the same devastating news: partnerships terminated, assets frozen, deals collapsing. The once mighty Ashfords were falling. Emily, standing quietly beside her father, watched as panic took over the very people who had mocked and humiliated her. For the first time, they felt the kind of helplessness she had endured. Karma had arrived, and it wore the face of Alexander Grayson. The once proud Ashford estate now echoed with desperation. The family that had ruled over the elite social circles with arrogance and cruelty was now scrambling to save what little they could. Lillian clutched her husband's arm. "Do something," she hissed, her voice shaking. "We can't lose everything." But Mr. Ashford knew it was already over. Alexander took a step forward, his piercing gaze locking onto Ashford Jr. "Tell me," he said smoothly, "was it fun? Was it satisfying to throw my daughter out like she was worthless?" Ashford Jr. swallowed hard. I didn't know." Alexander's hand slammed onto the dining table, making everyone flinch. "You didn't need to know. Human decency isn't reserved for the wealthy. You humiliated an innocent girl just because you could." Emily stood beside her father, watching the scene unfold. A part of her still felt the sting of betrayal, but another part, one she never knew existed, felt a sense of justice settling in. Lillian fell to her knees. "Please, Mr. Grayson, have mercy." Her voice cracked. "We made a mistake." Alexander tilted his head. "A mistake?" He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "A mistake is spilling a glass of wine. What you did was deliberate cruelty." Just then, the butler entered, his face pale. "Sir, the bank just called," he stammered. "The Ashford accounts have been frozen." A broken gasp escaped from Mr. Ashford's lips. No, this can't be happening." Alexander stepped toward Emily and placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "Consider this a lesson," he said, looking at the Ashfords one last time. "Respect is earned, not bought. And cruelty always comes at a price." With that, he turned, leading Emily away. The Ashfords' reign was over. And Emily's story was just beginning. As Emily and Alexander walked out of the Ashford estate, a strange sense of relief washed over her. For the first time in years, she felt seen, protected, like she wasn't just someone to be discarded. "Are you okay?" Alexander asked gently as they stepped into the sleek black limousine waiting for them. Emily exhaled deeply. "I don't know. It still feels unreal." He nodded. "I know it's a lot to process. But you're not alone anymore." The car pulled away from the mansion, leaving the broken Ashfords behind. Emily watched through the tinted window as the people who once belittled her were now crumbling under the weight of their own arrogance. "But what now? Where are we going?" she asked hesitantly. Alexander smiled. "Home." Emily blinked. "Home?" "My home." "Your home," he corrected. "You're my daughter, Emily. And from this moment on, you'll have everything you were meant to have." She swallowed hard. She had spent her whole life unwanted, treated as if she didn't belong. And now, this man, her father, was offering her the world. As they pulled up to a massive estate, even grander than the Ashfords, Emily's heart pounded. This wasn't just wealth, it was power, influence. The doors swung open, and a line of staff bowed in greeting. "Welcome home, Miss Grayson," they said in unison. For the first time in her life, Emily wasn't an outcast. She wasn't just a girl who didn't belong, she was Emily Grayson, the billionaire's daughter, and this was just the beginning. Emily stepped into the grand mansion, her breath catching at the sheer opulence around her. The marble floors gleamed under the golden chandeliers, the walls adorned with priceless artwork. This was nothing like the cold, loveless Ashford estate. This place felt warm, welcoming. Alexander led her through the halls, introducing her to the staff who treated her with genuine respect. It was a stark contrast to the mockery she had endured before. You'll have everything you need here, Alexander assured her. Education, opportunities, a future. Emily hesitated. Why now? Why didn't you come for me sooner? Alexander's face darkened. I didn't know you existed, Emily. Your mother kept you a secret from me. By the time I found out, you were already with the Ashfords. I tried to get you back, but they had legal guardianship. They made sure you stayed hidden. Her stomach twisted. All these years, she thought she was abandoned. But in reality, she was stolen. Tears burned in her eyes, but she held them back. The Ashfords had tried to break her, but they had failed. She wasn't a discarded girl anymore, she was Emily Grayson. And now, she had the power to decide her own future. I want to learn everything, she said firmly. Business, finance, leadership. I want to be strong enough to never let anyone treat me like that again. Alexander's lips curled into a proud smile. Then let's get started. Emily wasn't just going to live in luxury. She was going to rise, so high that the Ashfords would regret ever underestimating her. 1 year later, the grand ballroom of the Ashford estate was filled with the city's elite. Guests clinked glasses, murmuring about the surprise announcement that the Ashfords had planned. Olivia and Charles Ashford stood proudly, expecting applause for their latest business deal. Then the doors swung open, Emily walked in, gasps rippled through the crowd. The girl they had humiliated, cast out like trash, now stood before them, unrecognizable. She was poised, dressed in a designer gown, her eyes sharp with confidence. Beside her stood Alexander Grayson, the billionaire everyone feared and respected. Ladies and gentlemen, Alexander's voice boomed, commanding instant silence. Allow me to introduce my daughter, Emily Grayson. The room froze. The Ashfords paled. Impossible, Olivia whispered. Emily stepped forward, her voice steady. Surprised to see me? You shouldn't be. I was never worthless. You just didn't know my worth. A screen flickered on behind her, displaying documents, proof of fraudulent dealings, illegal transactions. Evidence of the Ashfords' crimes. I came here tonight to give you a choice, Emily said, her voice cutting through the silence. Either step down and confess, or watch your empire crumble. Charles Ashford's hands trembled. You wouldn't, Alexander smirked. She already has. Phones buzzed as breaking news alerts flooded in. The Ashfords were finished. Emily took one last look at the people who had tormented her. Then, with her head held high, she turned away. She had won, not just revenge. Justice, and this was only the beginning. If you love this story of justice and revenge, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping tales. What would you have done in Emily's place? Comment below and let us know. Stay tuned for more stories where the underdog always wins.